If the results of your functional assessment have concluded that your learner's challenging behaviors are attention seeking, then this is the episode you need. We are diving into effective strategies to request and gain attention with your learners. Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna. We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach children with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about attention-seeking behaviors. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So anyone who's been a parent can identify with the, level of attention that our kids need, which is fine, they're kids, but it always seems to coincide with when I was busy. So as soon as the phone would ring, that's when the tantrum would happen. Or as soon as I would start to do something like, working out, or I'd have to leave the house, then my kids would start fighting. And it wasn't, intentionally because they knew that I wasn't available, but something about the removal of attention sometimes snowballs that challenging behavior, where if there isn't somebody to facilitate, or if they know that, there's a transition happening or someone's leaving, then that could make attention so much more valuable, which can result in a lot of emotions or, other challenging behaviors. And that's what we're talking about today, the value of attention and sometimes the ways that our kids get attention.
So, attention-seeking tendencies are quite common. Shira and I were talking about them, before we recorded this, just about, oh gosh, like attention-seeking behavior is everywhere. We talk about our kids, our spouses, our friends, like it's everywhere, our coworkers, somebody pacing back and forth. But, I think the difference is that, our friends, our spouses, our kids, we know how to wait for attention. And that's a huge thing with our learners. Is a lot of these learners don't know how to wait to get attention, but they also don't know how to actually seek attention. And they don't know how to say, hey, pay attention to me. So that's our job to teach them.
Right. Our kids will keep doing the things that work for them. And the same way that we attend to our kids and our students when they're babies and they're crying and they may get hurt, and we of course attend to them. And that they sometimes grow out of that, and they'll learn language and they'll learn words and they'll learn all these ways to play and interact. And some of the students that we work with do not progress past that. And so they just keep using what works for them. And if they get help and they get attention and they get reinforcement that they're looking for some of the challenging behaviors like crying or hurting or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, it's really because it's working for them and they don't have the skills that develop more naturally, which is usually the language or play and social skills.
So let's break this down further. So let's talk about just what are attention-seeking behaviors, and then how do we look for them? How do we assess for them? That kind of thing.
So we always look for functions of behavior because that tells us what the behavior is trying to say. And when we know what the behavior is trying to say, then we can think about ways to replace it with better things. We call that a functional assessment. We'll look at what the antecedents are, what the behavior actually is, like what is the behavior that we're trying to reduce, and then looking at some of the consequences that might be maintaining it. We may do a functional analysis, which is actually manipulating some of those consequences to see if we could turn on and off behavior. And then we're constantly recording data to see if some of our interventions could work to change the baseline level of behavior. So when we're talking about the functions of behavior, and we have a whole other episode on the 4 functions of behavior, so you can go check that one out and we'll link that here. But when we're talking about the one function that we're referring to today is the attention function. And the antecedent or the trigger for somebody to, for that way we would know if the function was attention, was the removal of attention. So if we're looking at either ABC or an actual manipulation in an FA, with the removal of attention is what would trigger or be the SD or the antecedent for a challenging behavior. So if that challenging behavior is hitting, screaming, crying, whatever it is, it matters less than what the behavior is trying to say. And the behavior in this situation would be trying to say that I want attention in some form.
So I'm just laughing because a girlfriend of mine just bought a new puppy, and the new puppy is so cute. She sends me videos all the time, but she is also in the ABA field. She said, "Look at this! I just did an FA for attention on my dog," and she's petting the dog, and the dog's loving it. And then she stops petting the dog, and the dog kind of looks at her, and then takes his paw and like taps her on the shoulder. So she starts petting the dog again, and then the dog looks at her again, and stops petting her on the shoulder, and then the dog actually rolls onto his back, puts his paws up, and is the cutest thing in the entire world, but just looking so cute that you have to pet this dog. But really, I mean, that's attention seeking behavior. And I'm not at all comparing, anybody to a dog, but it's just a really simple form of going, oh yeah, that's attention seeking behavior. You can definitely see that in a new puppy. But looking to, looking to people we work with, attention seeking behavior can be very obvious, and other times it can be really subtle, but let's look for those obvious things. So, you see, the child that you're working with is doing something, and, they're, it may be some type of negative behavior. It's something that they know is not quite right, but they're looking at you in the eye, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And you can tell, like, okay, that's probably attention seeking behavior, because they're trying to seek your attention as they're engaging in that challenging behavior. At other times, we have to do a more formal assessment. It can't just be like, oh, they're trying to get my attention by making eye contact, so I know that, this is also attention-seeking behavior. But sometimes we have to break that down further and do what Shira called a functional analysis, which is where we try and manipulate some of the components and say, okay, let me see if I can actually give a whole bunch of attention and then remove the attention and see if I can get any type of challenging behavior that way. And again, that's not something that you want to put in place for a long period of time. It's really just a snippet in time to see whether or not the individual engages in some type of challenging behavior for that attention. So what a condition like that would look like is, you're, engaging with the student and you're providing attention, and then all of a sudden you're not. And it's not just walking away, but trying to manipulate things like what's happening in their real life. Maybe, the adults in the room, you get interrupted, somebody else walks into the room and you have to share your attention. Or maybe, you facilitate, you got a fake text on your phone that you have to respond to, or all of a sudden you got to do work on your computer. Whatever's happening in the student's real life, try and manipulate that in your environment just to test it. And so you test something like that, and if they engage in some type of challenging behavior, and again, just try like really low levels of challenging behavior. You don't need the behavior to escalate, severely above and beyond, but the minute you see any type of attention-seeking behavior, you attend to that behavior just in that condition to see whether or not we can increase the frequency of the challenging behavior by attending to it. Close your computer, get off your phone, have the person leave the room here who interrupted. That's what you want to do, just to test to see whether or not the student understands, okay, this is getting me my way. And that's how you would test that. Now, again, that's a test condition. And I keep, saying this over and over again, because when I first got into the field, I used to think, well, why would you want to do a functional analysis? Because you're really promoting and provoking that challenging behavior, and we don't really want to see that. We do when we're testing it for literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's it at the beginning, and that's it. Okay, great. We know that it's done. Check the box. It's done. And now we can go into trying to teach replacement skills and trying to come up with some type of behavior intervention plan. And you won't be, you won't be responding to that challenging behavior in the same way as you were in the functional analysis.
And the other thing you're looking for when you're assessing the function of the behavior is attention is a really broad category. So we have to think about what kind of attention is it? And I get this very often where, they were having all my attention, so I'm not sure why they, acted out this way. And then we would talk about it. Well, maybe it was the peer's attention, or maybe it was negative attention and they wanted a certain reaction from the staff or from the peer. Some kids just really like to be silly, and that gets them a lot of, kids laughing, and it's fun for them. And it's that kind of attention. For some kids, it is more of the negative attention. The other thing to think about is that there's often multifunctions. So when you're doing a functional assessment, you could look at, is it specific attention? Is it attention combined with a certain tangible? Is it escape from a demand to attention? So very often for a lot of students, it becomes escape from the classroom or from the task or the work. because I get to hang out with this friend in the hallway, or all of a sudden, I get to go to the principal's office and we have the best time. So, there's a lot of synthesized contingencies at play also, which is something to consider. And what we're looking at is what is this student trying to access? Like, what is that real specific function of their behavior? Because then we can try to replace it.
You said something really great there, sure. Well, a lot of things really great,
Thank
but
you.
one of the things you said is that negative attention is still attention. And that is something to really remember, because some students really like the reactions when they, are engaging in challenging behavior. So for instance, I had the student one time who's, would engage in some challenging behavior, and the mother would come into the room and say, hey, stop that. And, that wasn't enough, but the mother was really animated, and her face, like she just turned into this other person. It was actually really funny, actually, but she was, hey, you better stop that right now. And it was this silly voice, but it was somewhat angry, but not. And, the student I worked with would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And it was so hard for me not to laugh, because it was like almost cartoonish. But, she engaged in this challenging behavior really for that reaction. So keep that in mind too, is that sometimes attention isn't just like, because I want you off your phone, or because I, want you to play with me right now. It might be because I really want you to turn into that cartoon figure, and I like that negative attention too.
Right. Reinforcement doesn't mean that something good happens. Reinforcement means that it changes the likelihood of that behavior happening in the future. It could be that they get a lecture. It could be they get reprimanded, and that could still reinforce the attention-seeking behavior. So that's a really important thing to remember. So how do we target it? When we look at challenging behavior, we want to know the function because we want to replace it with other ways. The most common thing that we're going to start with as a replacement skill is usually language. And so we talk about functional communication training specifically for seeking attention.
So we do something called a request attention program. And really what we do is we look at the environments that the student is wanting to request for attention, and we try and give them key phrases. Now, we usually start with one key phrase, because it's a lot easier to teach one key phrase across a whole bunch of different environments than having to teach like 20,000 key phrases for a whole bunch of different environments. So it might just be attention, please. But again, you may want something more functional, like, what are you doing? Or, hey, what's that? I look at the way younger kids get attention, and, you look at a 2-year-old, and a 2-year-old is all about why, or what dat. So, being able to teach our learners just, what are you doing? Or what's that? If you're working with a teenage learner and they're trying to get their peers' attention, will you play with me isn't going to cut it. But walking into, a group of teenage kids and going, what's up? Or sup, I think is the cool word, right? Something like that. So just like a blanket term, teach them that one term, and they can get attention across everything. Now, doesn't that sound so easy? Just teach them that, and get on with it. I guess the question is, how do we teach that?
Right. So you want to look at the specific situations, like Shannon was saying, where they're going to need that phrase. So is it with peers? Is it with adults? And then you want to offer lots of opportunities to practice. So create contrived teaching situations, because it's going to be very hard once they've already started, hitting the friend, to jump in there and remind them that we have this phrase. So you want to contrive situations and
Role
prepare.
play.
Yes, AKA role play, and prepare either a visual prompt or a text prompt or a word or a picture, whatever it is that you need to help the student learn this phrase. And you can even tell them with priming, be like, you know what, we're going to practice something now. I'm going to turn my back. And when you want something from me, maybe I'm holding something that you want. This is what you could do to get it. You could say, look at this. You could say, play with me, whatever that phrase is. You can give them the visual prompt, and let's practice. And then you keep doing that practice. And then eventually you translate those practice scenarios into real, generalized situations. You also always want to remember to include reinforcement, even in the practice situations, because what's in it for them when this thing that was so much easier to use still got them what they wanted? You're not going to be able to, not attend to every time that they have challenging behavior, but you can offer better and more reinforcement, which we call differential reinforcement, for responses that you want to see more of. So when they do use their words or they tap you on the shoulder instead of the thing that you're replacing, you want to offer lots of reinforcement for that. And that could be very specific praise, could be a tangible, it could be a token, it could be whatever it is that you're using in that situation. Remember to reinforce that.
But also remember that, going back to why should they be using their words in the first place? Because they're getting attention, and, their challenging behavior was reinforcing, increasing the likelihood that they're going to engage in challenging behavior again because of the attention piece. So when Shira says, give them reinforcement for this role play situation, like it could be a token, it could be some type of tangible, but probably the most important, or the best reinforcement will probably be your attention, because they want attention. So if they learn, I use my words even in practice situations and I get a lot of attention for it, then that will increase.
And that's such a great strategy because so often it's hard to control peers, right? And when you're in a classroom or a group setting and there's a child who really loves that peer attention, instead of trying to completely reduce it, what we can try to do is just channel it differently. So we'll sometimes get them to, teach something to the class or do a show and tell, and this is what they would work for telling jokes to the class. And so we're kind of offering them exactly what it is that they were looking for, being silly, making friends laugh, and that's very specific kind of attention, in a way that we're not just saying never do this and never tell jokes because it's not appropriate, but let's teach you ways to do it so that it is appropriate and it's not disruptive or whatever it is that was the challenge. And so use that exact thing that they're motivated for as reinforcement.
And then looking into that further, we can then start to expand the phrases that we're teaching them. So they've learned how to, walk in somewhere or get someone's attention by saying, "What are you doing?" And that's just enough of an attention seeking phrase. And it's across a whole bunch of different environments. But once they get really good at that, we can hone in on specific situations and teach more and more phrases. So after they've mastered, "What are you doing?" we can teach them other phrases like, sup,
Look at
or look
this.
at this, check this out, wow, and really making sure that we're creating a bunch of different phrases so that they sound a lot more natural. And then telling other things, like other ways to get attention, like Shira said, might be to work for, telling a joke to the whole class, but maybe we just need them to teach them how to tell jokes, and that's enough, or teach them a handful of jokes so that they, can pull them out whenever they want some attention.
And then remembering to also teach the skill of tolerating when attention's not available, because at the same time, they do have to learn to wait. So maybe once they're, making some progress with one or two phrases, you can introduce waiting so they can get your attention. They just have to wait a couple seconds, or they have to do something first, or waiting when it's not available at all, and tolerating that and maybe doing something else instead. So these are all really important components of the replacement skills for attention-seeking behavior.
And I think it really goes to show you that it's really important to determine that function of behavior before you try and do anything. Because if the function wasn't attention, we would have a whole other strategy for working with this. We wouldn't teach them attention seeking phrases. We would teach them escape related phrases or something else. So we've got other videos on the functions of behavior. Go check them out as well.
For more information on attention-seeking behavior, click the link on or around this video or in the description to claim your free functions of behavior cheat sheet. We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos, and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.